I am looking at the practice exam online. If you printed it out, it'll make it easier to follow along with me. I can split this back up and forth every time I need it up there. But I've learned if I try to write with my big old markers for videos on what I'm doing here, it's not gonna go very well. So I'm gonna write the first equation down. Well, actually, I'll write down the equations. I'll write down what I'm doing. One, graph the equation. I guess I could say what this is. This is Math 35. Day, I think 16, right, Lauren? Yeah. This is review for the midterm. This is based on the practice midterm. Did anyone do the practice midterm? Other than Keith, I know Keith did it. Davis did part of it. Anybody else? Some of it? You printed it. I'll give you something to write on. So graph the equation. The first one we got y equals -5 times the absolute value of x minus 4. So our final graph is going to be in red. I'm sketching what goes on first. Like this is y equals absolute value of x. So every time I go right one, I go up one, and every time I go left one, I go up one. If I scale it by 5, every time I go left or right one, I go up 5, not 1. So I get a much steeper V. This is y equals the absolute value, or 5 times the absolute value of x. The -4 is going to move it down 4. It'll put my V there. And the -5 is going to flip it upside down. So I didn't give myself enough line. One, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I'll use my red dots now. I go down 5 and left to right 1, and I got a downward pointing V. And it's a very narrow V. It's not like the regular absolute value. So absolute value of x is left to right 1, up 1. And if I have a times the absolute value of x, it's left to right 1, up a.
I have a
If we
question.
have x minus h plus k, rather than like these start at 0, 0. The green one is going to start at hk and do the same shit. So in our problem, the h was 0, the k was -4. So we're starting at 0, -4. All right, number 2 is the logarithm problem.
I have a question.
Yeah.
For number 1, could you just like pick your own like x points like 0, 1, and -1 and still do the same thing?
You can do whatever you want as long as it's shows some work and you can get it done in the allotted time. You can
But I
very
mean,
much
like,
go, what is x, if x equals 0, what do I get? If x equals 1, what do I get? If x equals 2, what do I get? You can very much do that.
Okay, and then graph it like that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I don't remember if it's an absolute value problem or not. The idea is graphing an equation. We went over a bunch of different types of equations. There was x squared, there was x cubed. I can't promise that it's an absolute value. This one was expand. No exponents or radicals at the end. So things that are multiplied together turn to addition on the outside. And things that are divided lead to subtraction. Finally, exponents can be brought down. Got it. If you memorize these basic rules, this problem is really fucking easy. There's no calculations, there's no real math to do, there's just like follow the formula.
What about the base?
What is the base here?
Well, just 10?
It's just 10. I don't need it.
You don't want us to raise the function and get rid of the logs?
Nope. We'll only do that when there's an equal sign and you're trying to solve for x. So you only try to get rid of the logs when you're trying to solve. If there's no equal sign, don't do solving. Fair enough? That sounds like a good thing to say. If there's no equal sign. Don't try to solve it. There's another way to get that without even doing the exponent thing. If I write this as log of 4 times 6 plus x times 6 plus x times 6 plus x over x times x times x times x times x. You can go from directly there to there. But just do them all one at a time. You got log 4 plus log of 6 plus x plus log of 6 plus x plus log of 6 plus x minus log x minus log x minus log x. This is tedious. That's why knowing the exponent rules is much faster. I've got 5 of these. Five of them, so it's minus 5 log x. I've got 3 of these, so it's plus 3 log 6 plus x. I think doing the exponent thing is easier, but there's more than one way to skin a cat, as my mom always said. I need to stop using that. I've had students cry before. Like they just lost the fucking family cat that week. It was a really bad timing. It's not very often, but occasionally I get. Then I feel bad, but I never think about it later when I use it again. If you recently lost a cat, my condolences, but get a better pet. Try a dog.
So what's the final answer?
Cat.
So the stuff that you did on the bottom,
Was showing another way to do it.
it's, I was gonna say, when it's a log plus a log, that's times.
Times on the inside,
Yeah, it's a log minus a log, it's the.
division on the inside, yeah. Alright, next problem is the difference quotient. You need to know how to do this for calculus. It's essential. Whether you'll remember by the time you get to calculus is another question altogether, but at least if you master it here, you're in good shape. F of x plus h, oops. F of x plus a, I fucking did it again. How about I just write what f of x is first? And then I'm gonna say find f of x plus h minus f of x over h. So the f of x plus h is just plugging in x plus h everywhere I see an x. And expanding it out. That is f of x plus h. If I want to do minus f of x over h, I can subtract, I can put this all over h. And I can subtract the initial f of x. So I'm going to write above this what changes the signs here. This becomes positive 2x squared plus 4x minus 1 when I distribute. And we're going to combine the green stuff with the red stuff. I have a negative 2x squared and a positive 2x squared. These go away. I have a positive 4x and a negative 4x. Those go away. And I have a positive 1 and a negative 1. Those cancel. What I'm left with on top is negative 4hx minus 2h squared minus 4h. On bottom, I just have h. Now, if I factor out an h out of the top, and I rearrange the order a little bit, I have this. Or I just switched the last two's order. That way I have the thing with an h all by itself. Finally, that h on top and bottom cancels. And I'm left with negative 4x minus 4 minus 2h.
That way too. Reduce it any further.
No, don't redo it. Do not try to divide by 2 because you're not solving for anything, so there's no need to. If you factor it out, I'm not gonna mark you wrong like this. If you put like. If you put negative 2 or positive 2, if you factor out a negative 2, this would be 2x plus 2 plus h. Yeah, that's still fine. You just can't get rid of the 2. If you take it out, you have to have it there somewhere. But I would just leave it like this, that's just more steps. Alright, next problem. Word problem. A ball is thrown vertically. Up. After T seconds. Its height in feet. Is given by. And I'll write it right here in red. H of T equals 108 T minus 16 T squared. What is the maximum height? At what time will it reach that height? And it says do not round. So we have a little Jimmy here. Jimmy's not in here anymore. James is here. We got James. He fucking throws the ball up and gets here, and then the ball comes back down. And he catches it. If I show that as height and I track the position over time, as time goes on, the ball goes up, up, up. And at a certain time, it stops going up and it starts coming back down. Until the height is 0, where we'll say H equals 0 is where James's hand is. So what kind of equation models this?
I wanna say,
What's the shape look like? It's a parabola. This is an equation for a parabola. What do we call the point where it does this?
vertex,
It's the vertex. What's the formula for the vertex?
HK.
Well, HK is one of them, but we actually have a formula we can use from here to do it.
Quadratic formula.
Well, that's not what I had in mind. X equals negative b over 2a. And y is f of negative b over 2a. That's the quickest way. You can complete the square and write it in the fucking formula shape that gives you h of k.
Could you technically say with that, if we were to write out the whole quadratic formula, the part after negative b would be 0 automatically? Because there would be a 0 value there for. You could kind of conceive of that being 0.
Yeah.
Like that's the c.
But there's still a b squared in there.
But it's still times, because it's plus, like the c, it's, yeah.
So you got negative b plus or minus square root of b squared is
Yeah.
negative b plus or minus b,
Yeah, so that's, yeah.
which is either 0 or 2b. Alright, so I don't recommend completing the square. What if this is H, what is A and what is B?
A is 16 and B is 108.
A is 16, B is 108 is really fucking close. Negative 16.
Oh, negative.
Yeah, just because I don't have the t squared listed first, don't let that trick you. So x is negative b, which is negative 108. over 2 times -16. So 108 over -108 over -32. What is that in a calculator?
3.375.
I'll take your word for it. Well, people are still writing, so I can check. That looks good. I wrote X, but that's not really an X, this is T. And what's H of T? I'm gonna plug that in. Plug in the 3.375. I'm getting H of 3.375, that's our T there, is 182.25. Did anyone else get that?
I got that.
Okay, good. So what is my answer to these questions? What is the max height?
One hundred and 82.25 feet.
That's the height. So our max height, and it was in feet, height in feet. So that's our max height, and at what time does that occur? .375 seconds. You guys ready for number 5? Are we having fun yet? Isn't this like the best medicine you've ever had, Lauren? Is like a good pick me up. Just feeling down for like a week and a half, and she's like, "Fuck yeah, hit me with the fucking max shit. That's good stuff." Just mainline that stuff. All right, number 5. Number 5 is solve. U squared minus 49 times 2u plus 16 equals 0. Now, your first inclination might be to multiply that shit out, and that's a bad decision. Because if you multiply it out, it's really hard to go back without knowing what it is. Thankfully, we already know. The zero property rule says we're looking for u. The easiest way is to split this into 2 equations. U squared minus 49 equals 0, or 2u plus 16 equals 0. Probably the easiest way to do this one is to get the 49 on the other side and take the square root. And you get u equals plus or minus 7. Or you could have factored. Also factors. I think doing the square root is probably easier, as long as you remember the plus or minus. Here, we'll subtract 16. Divide by 2. U equals -8. So u equals -8, -7, or 7.
Can we factor TU plus 16?
What?
Can we factor TU plus 16, like divide everything by 2?
You could, you should still get U equals -8.
And there's three answers because if you were to factor out this, whatever, it would be like a cube.
Yep. And the cube tells you the maximum number of possible unique answers.
If the U squared minus was like a weird number. So you can still technically do it that way.
Yeah.
If it was
If this was U squared minus 73. If that's what you had, this would just be U squared equals 73, U equals plus or minus square root of 73. Just because it's not a pretty number doesn't mean it's not the right number.
and that would still be, that would look like in factor form. U plus root of 73 and U minus root of 73.
Yep. So this was a Davis question for anyone looking at it later on. Number 6, right. Y equals x squared plus 6x plus 10. So, XY table is not gonna be your friend here. I'm certain of it. Because if it's, you don't do it in the right area, it's gonna look like a straight line, and it's not a straight line. It's definitely a parabola, right? We got a square, it better look like a fucking parabola. So a better choice is to complete the square. So I'm gonna take the 6, cut it in half, square it. This is plus 9. And since I added 9, I gotta subtract 9. In factored form, I get x plus 3 squared plus 1. Which gives me a vertex where?
Negative 3, 1.
-3, 1. Now, since there's no multiplier in front of this one is left or right 1. Up 1. Left or right 2. Up 4. We're squaring the number. So that's probably the easiest way to go about doing this. Two, 4, 5, 8, 9, 10. There you go. So I've got -3, 1. Add a couple more left or rights. And I know it's opening upwards because why?
It's the positive 8.
It's a positive A, yeah, A is 1 here is positive, so it is going upward. So we go left or right 1 and up 1. Left or right 2 and go up 4. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Left or right 3 would be what in terms of up? 9, we're squaring it. So up 9 would be at the 10. Definitely want to put arrowheads on it because it keeps going. That's probably the easiest way to do this. Other ways you can do it is find the vertex and then find the intercepts. And we can see there's no x-intercepts. So you're gonna stumble when you get there. The y-intercept though is when x equals 0. It's easy to get from the equation, so 0, 10. And we can see that right there. So even if you just had the vertex and the y-intercept, you can use symmetry along the axis to plot the point over here. So symmetry to get that point. And make a big U. It should look rounded on the bottom. Do not make a fucking point. It's not an absolute value sign.
You have, used the negative B2A thing on this, or no?
Yeah,
You could have just used that, but not the, so.
Yeah.
I was gonna say. And then that's it.
x equals negative b over 2a equals negative 6 over 2 times 1, which is negative 3. And you do f of negative 3, and you're gonna get 1. So you could have done that for the vertex as well. Excellent point. All right, number 7. Gosh, explaining these things is taking time. So we've got f of x equals square root of x squared minus 3. G of x equals x plus 1. Find fog x and its domain. So recall fog x means taking g of x and putting it inside of f of x. So I'm gonna have my f of x and here's my x. And I'm gonna stick in g of x in the middle. That is fog x. We could make it a little bit better. By distributing. If we do the x plus 1 squared, we get x squared plus 2x plus 1 minus 3. Or square root of x squared plus 2x minus 2. So that's fog x. God, I hope I picked a better problem like this than for the domain. So x squared plus 2x minus 2 has to be greater than or equal to 0 for the domain. And unfortunately, this doesn't factor, and it's gonna give shitty fucking answers.
Could you, without changing the equation, you could do the original equation. To, and set it greater than or equal to 0.
Yeah.
Just go straight to.
Take the square root. I'm gonna ignore this inequality for now. Just to get the values there. Because now you gotta do a number line. I don't have any idea what those values are. Square root of 3 is like 1.7. So this is like negative 2.7 and 0.7, so 0 is like in the middle. And you do a little number line and find out which regions. 0 makes it negative, so I think positive is outside of it. So it should be from negative infinity to -1 minus root 3. In union with -1 plus root 3 to infinity. Hopefully the midterm question is fucking easier than that. I'll have to check that tonight, and if it isn't, I'll have to do it. I didn't want it this complicated on the test. You're too easily entertained.
I was gonna say, we can also do the quadratic formula to find the same answer.
Yep, but you still gotta do the domain thing. This one, the midterm line's a lot easier.
They're not brackets because it's
Yes,
greater than or equal to.
Good catch. All right, 8. H of x equals -8x plus 5 over 1 plus 5x. Find H inverse, domain, and range of both. So domain of H is the range of H inverse and vice versa. Which might be the easiest way to find both of these things. So let's first off find H inverse. So I will make this a y. Then I swap x's and y's. I'm gonna multiply both sides by 1 plus 5y because butt fraction, that's why. Distribute. I'm gonna get all my y's on the left, and I'm gonna move everything else to the other side. Then I will factor out a y. And finally divide by that. And that'll be H inverse. So I'll pause for a second, let you guys process that. Alright, so. The domain for h of x. Is where the bottom doesn't equal 0. So 1 plus 5x cannot equal 0. If you solve for that, x cannot equal -1/5. So -infinity to -1/5. In union with -1/5 to infinity. That is the domain of h of x and the range of h inverse.
Is it for both problems though? Or we need domain and range for both?
Yes, I'm not done.
So,
Then we're gonna find the domain of h inverse. Doing the same thing we just did, which will give us the range of h of x. So here. The denominator again can't equal 0, so 5x plus 8 cannot equal 0. If you solve for that, you're gonna get -8/5 is what it can't equal. So -infinity to -8/5. In union with -8/5 to infinity. Yeah, go for me, Keith. Ew. That one had a little bite. Damn barking spiders in here. All right, if you need longer. Check the upload. But
I'm just gonna ask, why, are we reporting? That the range is the inverse of the first half of the problem,
because that's how inverses work.
but it's not that the domain and range are the same.
They switch. So e to the x. And y equals natural log x. Are inverses. This is at 1, 0, this is at 0, 1. This is at, oh, this is at 1, so up here is at E. And right here, this one is at E, this is E comma 1. And this is 1 comma E. The X's and Y's, the very reason how we swapped X and Y. Is the giveaway that the domains swap. Cause that the domain is the X's and the ranges are the Y's. That make sense? So that leads us to our swap. Alright, so. That just explains swapping domain and range. Number 9. Solve. We have square root of 2x plus 6 equals square root of x plus 2 plus 1. We will square both sides. When you distribute, you're gonna have x plus 2 for the first thing, square these. If you do this times this and this times this, you're gonna get 2 of the x plus 2's, square root of x plus 2's. And finally, you have a plus 1 there.
Can we rearrange the one, that we can bring it as a positive, we just bring it to the front? And
I have no idea what you mean.
like, okay, the square root of x, plus 2, and plus 1, and move the 1 in the front, and then start doing the FOIL?
Sure, as long as you end up with this, I don't care what you do. If there's a minus sign though, make sure the minus sign sticks with the right number. So. I'll subtract x from both sides. I'm trying to get the square root by itself. I'll subtract 2 from both sides. And I'll subtract that 1 from both sides. I get x plus 3 on the left. Equals 2 square root of x plus 2 on the right. And now we gotta square it again to get rid of the square root. When you FOIL this, you get x squared plus 6x plus 9. Which comes from x plus 3 times x plus 3. Equals, that's gonna be 2 squared and then square root of x plus 2 squared. It's gonna be 4 times x plus 2. And I'll get shit by itself. By subtracting everything over on the right to the left. Minus 4x, minus 8, minus 8. This gives me x plus 1 squared equals 0. So x equals -1. It's really got 2 solutions of -1. We'll talk about that later on. You don't need to see them both though. So we're only gonna look at one of them, which means we need to check it. So let's check. Square root of 2 times -1 plus 6. Does that equal square root of -1 plus 2 plus 1? So this is my check. This is square root of 4. Does that equal square root of 1 plus 1? Yes, it does. 2 equals 2. So x equals -1 is the solution. And let's take a 5-minute break. All right, question number 10. We have solve for X. Give an exact answer and a rounded one. Answer and then rounded to 100th place. And the equation is e to the 5x plus 2 equals 15. This is Michelle's favorite type of question. Well, it doesn't say log in it yet. But it will. The way we solve for exponentials is we want to get the exponent out of there. We have to use logarithms. I'm going to use log base e on both sides. So I'm going to treat what's there as what's in parentheses for a log base e. I'm choosing the same base that's present. It tends to make it easier. Unless it's not a 10 or an e. In fact, I'll deliberately use 10. I'm going to use a different base. Let's use 10. In both scenarios, I can bring the exponent down now. For times log, and log base 10 is just log. But I'll write it for you. I'll divide by the log on both sides. So I get 5x plus 2 equals log 10 of 15 over log 10 of e. I'll subtract 2 from both sides. And then I'll divide by 5. Or multiply by 1/5. If you used ln or log base e, this looks like 1/5 -2 plus ln of 15, because the bottom would be 1. But these are the exact answers. A rounded answer, I'll throw that shit in a calculator. So log 15 divided by log e. Oh, I didn't like that. Log 15 divided by log e to the first power. There, I'll take that one. -2, and then I divide by 5. And I'm getting 0.14161004 when I plug it in. So the 100th place, 0.14. Ready for more? $11. Y equals x squared minus 2x minus 8. Find intercepts and vertex.
Do we even have to state the maximum and minimum?
It doesn't say that on this. But I like where you're going. Max or min? At vertex.
Sorry, guys.
Well, I'm not gonna retype the exam, which has already been printed, but it's fun to know. So, vertex. We can do x equals negative b over 2a. Which is negative 2 over 2 times 1. Which is just 1. And then I can do y at 1. 1 squared minus 2 times 1 minus 8. Looks like negative 9.
Could you say actually at this point that x is actually h and y here is actually k?
That's my HK. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah,
Yeah. So you could rewrite this as x minus 1 squared minus 9. And you'll see if you complete the square, that's what you'll get. To find the y-intercept, x equals 0. Y equals 0 squared minus 2 times 0 minus 8. Y equals negative 8. So my y-intercept is 0, negative 8. My x-intercepts is when y equals 0. Or if you did it the way Davis wants to do it, you could use that. This one's easy enough to factor already. This is x minus 4 times x plus 2. And I get x-intercepts of 4, 0 and negative 2, 0. If I solve those. So vertex, y-integer, not integer, y-intercept, x-intercepts. Is this a max or a min?
it's a. Min.
It's a min. If you just plot it real quick, 1, negative 9 is down here. If you got some intercepts like this, it's opening up, which means that's got to be a minimum. But the max or min is not part of that. Yeah. That's just Keith wanting me to make it worse. I heard him. He asked me. You know how I know he meant it? Because then he apologized to the rest of the class. Which means he knew what he did. He knew it was wrong. But he had already, it was too late. He opened Hefe's box. All right, next question. Number 12. Solve and show as interval notation. X plus 1 squared times x minus 5 times x squared minus 9 is less than 0. And instead of using x squared minus 9, I'm gonna rewrite this in its factored form, x minus 3 and x plus 3. This means I have critical points at where x plus 1 equals 0. I got x equals -1. X minus 5 equals 0. I get x equals 5. And where this equals 0, I get x equals plus or minus 3. So I'll plot them. We're looking for less than or negative regions, which means we gotta do all this stuff. I'll pick a test subject in each region. I'm gonna do it in red, so it's a little easier to see. And remember, all we need is the signs in that region. I am literally doing -2 plus 1, -2 plus 1, -2 minus 5, -2 minus 3, and -2 plus 3. If I write that out a little bit better. And I don't care about the number, I'm just checking for the sign. The first parentheses is negative, the second parentheses is negative. Third parentheses is negative, negative, and the last one's positive. The overall sign in this region is positive. Yeah,
But it has to be less than 0. right?
you're right, we're getting there. We're just notating what each region is, and then we'll pick the answers that match. I'm gonna do the same thing with the other ones. If I stick in -10, I got a negative, a negative, a negative, a negative, a negative. They're all negatives. So this region is negative. If I stick in a 0, I just have the sign that what's in there. I got a +1, a +1, a -5, a -5, or a -3, and a +3. I got plus, plus, minus, minus, plus. This region is positive. If I stick in 4, 4 plus 1 is positive. And I got that twice, that's positive. 4 minus 5 is negative. 4 minus 3 is positive. And 4 plus 3 is positive. I've only got one negative sign, so that region is negative. And if I stick in 10, these are all positive. And so this region is positive. That's probably a better way to show this. -10 plus 1, -10 plus 1, -10 minus 5, -10 minus 3, -10 plus 3. All of these are negative regions. So as David said, we only want the negative region. Which is this region right here. And this region right here. So what symbols do I use? This is negative infinity to -3. And 3 to 5. Do I use parentheses or brackets?
Parentheses,
Why?
because the sign is less than.
Sign is less than and is not less than or equal to, so parentheses it is. Notice we had two regions back to back that had the same sign. So they don't always alternate. If you were doing the homework, there's a lot of ones that alternate. And it didn't change sign over -1. Because x plus 1 squared. When you have an even power, it doesn't change signs over it. That's not as important to memorize as just being able to do this sign chart thing. That's the answer.
That differentiation is that's what's messing up the pattern, like if.
The square is messing up the pattern of the signs, yes.
Because the one, it's the same actual equation.
Yeah. And well, when we get to graphing it later on, we'll see why.
And it's kind of, it's almost as if there would have been a region between. Like, right about where -1 is, there's like just that one line is that region.
Well, if we graph something like this, normally it's zigzagging over the intercept
Exactly.
or the x-axis. When you have an even power, it doesn't go across it. It hits it and bounces off. So it stays on the same side. We'll see that later on. It's not worth memorizing for this midterm. David's asking questions that are gonna freak the fuck out everybody else. All right, 13. F of x equals, it's a composite function. It says graph it and is it continuous? There's some shit going on at one. This looks like where all the action is. The middle one's pretty easy to do. If x equals 1, y equals 2. To the left of it, we have a parabola that has a vertex at 0, 1. And goes up 1 to the left or right, and then goes up 4. It skyrockets to the left. So that's x squared plus 1. And you might find it helpful to like do it in pencil and then erase the part you don't need. So like x squared plus 1 is like this. But we don't want, we only want x less than 1, so we only want this part. So that's what I've mapped up here. 8 minus 3x equals 0. I'm gonna say 8 minus 3x equals y. This is, it's making a line. So if I look at it this way, negative 3x plus 8, it has a y-intercept of 8, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And it has a slope of negative 3 over 1. So down 3 over 1, 2, 3 over 1. And this looks like this starts up way up here at 6. And it's going like that. The important thing is it's above this. If I stick in x equals 1, I get y equals negative 3 plus 8, y equals 5. So it's higher up. The greater than gives you a hollow circle, the less than gives you a hollow circle as well. But the equals one, x equals 1 is an equal thing, so it just happened to fill in the same dot. So that's the graph. It's gonna look like this. If I get rid of the other writing on it. That's the shape. If it's continuous, I don't need to lift up my pencil. I have to lift up my pencil to draw it, so it's not continuous. Number 14. Quadratic formula question. So A equals 5, B equals -9, C equals 2. We have x equals negative b, which is -9, plus or minus the square root of -9 squared minus 4 times 5 times 2. All over 2 times 5. The -9 is +9. That is the square root of 81 minus 40 over 10. So x equals 9 plus or minus square root of 41 over 10. So 9 plus square root of 41 over 10, or 9 minus square root of 41 over 10.
Will you accept the plus or minus sign, or do we need to write out two different individual?
This will be accepted, but you need to know that this is the same thing.
Okay.
Okay, I'll accept the plus or minus. This is okay. But know this, that it means this. You guys ready for more? Number 15. Solve for y. Where y is a real number. So square root signs are like fractions, fuck them. We're gonna square it and get rid of it. I will subtract everything over on the left because we have something that looks quadratic. So y equals 4 or y equals -3. Check. Y equals 4. Turns the equation into 4 equals square root of 4 plus 12. Is that true? 4 equals the square root of 16 is true. So y equals 4 is a valid bingo. Y equals -3. -3, does that equal negative square root of -3 plus 12? Does -3 equal the square root of 9? No. So this one is out. The only answer is y equals 4. Yeah,
And because is just a root of non square numbers, any negative value would not have sufficed. Like this
Correct.
would not be a negative value at all.
right. So square root doesn't have a negative answer.
Unless I is
I is still, that's a complex answer. It's not able to be negative.
like to. If it was like, if the answer, if the result was like 3i or something.
Another time, it's not, that's not real. Like square root of -1 is I, but like. You shouldn't have a problem like that. 16, factor completely. Factor and simplify. And we have x squared plus 2x squared. Minus 8 times x squared plus 2x. Plus 12. If I say u equals x squared plus 2x. I can rewrite this as u squared minus 8u plus 12. Because that's a u and that's a u.
Does that say x squared plus 2x and then like a square on the outside, or is that just a negative?
It's a square on the outside. This should be a little more flattened out Let me rewrite it so it's a little clearer. Is that a little bit better? So if I were to factor this. This is u minus 6 and u minus 2. And we'll put the u's back in. Without using the quadratic formula, these don't factor anymore. So. We are done factoring with whole numbers. Say without using quadratic formulas. Alright, you guys ready for more? Yeah, I want to use you. Gain solve for x. Log base 8 of x plus 2. Plus log base 8 of x minus 3 equals 1/3. So. Can't really solve these until they're one logarithm. So we're gonna put these together, we're gonna combine them. They have the same base, so that stays the same. And addition on the outside turns to multiplication on the inside. And that ends up being, if I factor it out. X squared minus x minus 6 in there. Now. So we can either do the whole rewrite as the, using the formula where we go. This is the base, this is the exponent, and this is the other side. That's just using the switching between exponents and logs. Or we can treat both sides as exponents of 8. Which does the same thing. Either way, we're gonna end up with x squared minus x minus 6 equals 8 to the 1/3, which is 2. I think this is a little bit easier to remember. So, subtract 2 over, I get x squared minus x minus 8. And that doesn't factor, so we need to do a quadratic formula. X equals 1 plus or minus 1 plus 32 is square root of 33 over 2. Let's get a little approximate answers for these, because I bet one of these doesn't work. Approximately 2.25. And approximately negative 1.58. If I check in the initial equations, we gotta check log base 8 of x plus 2 and log base 8 of x minus 3. Did I do this right?
Yes. I think. Yeah.
Plus 2x minus 3x is minus x.
I got different values on the x's themselves.
You what?
On my calculator, it's saying, 3.37.
I hit divided by 3, son of a bitch. Let me recheck. I did it fucking again. I'm like, neither of those is fucking working. I hit divided by 3 rather than divided by 2. So if I stick in x is about 3.37. This is positive. And this is positive. Which is good. This has to be, the argument has to be greater than 0. Which is good, which means this is a valid answer. If I stick in negative 2.37, that's a negative and that's a negative. It doesn't work in either. So that one is out. It's very important that you check in the original equation. If you check in log base 8 of x squared minus x minus 6, it's gonna work. You're gonna have a minus times a minus is a positive. So it will say positive, which is wrong. You gotta check in the original equation.
The log cannot be of a negative.
Or 0.
Or is it?
And it has to do with the graph of the log. The y-axis is an asymptote. It doesn't cross it. Just like exponentials don't cross the x-axis. We got 3 more, we're gonna make it, I think we will, let's do it. Graph. 6x minus 3y equals 15. One way of doing this is solve for y. -5, 0, -5 is our y-intercept. And m is 2, which is 2 over 1. Rise of 2 over 1, rise of 2 over 1, rise of 2 over 1. Looks like that. So that's doing y equals mx plus b. Another way for just lines is option B. Find intercepts. When x equals 0, -3y equals 15, so y equals -5. I get the point 0, -5. When y equals 0, 6x equals 15. So x equals 2.5. And I get 2.5 comma 0. And we can see these right on the graph. You got 2 dots, connect the points. Pick a path. Yeah, on the line one, when there's no exponents, you can do an XY chart. As long as you graph the line correctly, that's the important part. Nineteen, condense. Okay, so first thing, we're gonna distribute the 1/2. Then we can treat those as exponents. The coefficients on the outside are exponents on the inside. And finally, we merge. Things that are added become positive and things that are negative get divided. That's valid, or you can write it and you can use radical notation. All of these are the same. You don't look like you're having enough fun.
Zero sleep.
That's no bueno. Alright, question number 20. Where'd you go? So find the interval. Find the solution interval. Our critical points are anywhere that generates a zero. So the top x minus 7 equals 0 says that x equals 7 is a critical point. And so I'll say that's top, and this is bottom critical points. X equals 0 or x plus 4 equals 0. And we get x equals 0 or -4. Since we have the equal to line, we can include any of the things on top as a valid answer. So 7 gets a solid point. Because of less than or equal to. Bottom, it doesn't matter if it says less than or equal to, greater than or equal to. The bottom can never equal 0. So 0 and -4 get hollow points. And after that, we're gonna check regions. I have -10 minus 7, I've got -10, and I've got -10 plus 4. If I'm sticking them in to these different three things. That's a negative, that's a negative, and that's a negative. So this region is a negative.
Would it be -10 plus 7? Or no,
It's -10 minus 7.
I thought you were talking about the critical points, because the critical point is 7.
Yeah, but that comes from x minus 7. If I stick in -2, I've got -2 minus 7, -2, and -2 plus 4. That's a negative, that's a negative, that's a positive. This whole region is positive. Because we count the number of negative signs and an even number of negative signs goes away. I check 1. That's a negative, that's a positive, and that's a positive. This region is negative. And these are all positive, so the final region is positive. We want regions that are greater than or equal to 0, which is right here. And right here. So in interval notation, we've got -4 to 0 in union with 7 to infinity. Boom. And that's it. We will have our test on Wednesday or Thursday. I'll be in here at 2 if you want to come in and start early. I will stay till 6, but at 6, I'm grabbing papers off your desk. Gotta be done by 6, so don't show up at 5 and think you're still gonna get 2 hours. But if you're at 2, you can work till 6 and effectively have 4 hours. You should be able to do the test in under 2 hours, 2 hours or less.
Only thing is to, it's in the time, I'm gonna take it in here instead of.
You can take it in here if you like.
I think. Well, this up. My tier doesn't-
No, I'll have a clear bottle for you. I do have a clear bottle, I ain't lying. Now Teresa's great, what the fuck? What's that about?
Then. I'm having a reaction to what I'm doing.
Oh shit, are you?
I'm there.
It's like, well, sometimes gives me the dry heat.
Really?
Yeah.
It sucks. No, you too.